going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and I wanted to post this video as a further update concerning not only the 66 Ranchero, but I also wanted to cover the Ford 200. It's the little inline six that's also in this truck, the engine build that I had planned for this channel. So part of the issues for me being able to upload more videos on it has been parts availability and trying to figure out the best way to go about the build. As some of you may know, I wanted to do a super traditional hot rod build on that the Ford 200, but parts and just different availabilities of different types of parts have been an issue with this engine. And I wanted to go over some of those issues and kind of talk about the way we're going to be moving ahead with the engine build. So stick around, and I promise we'll hopefully go over everything and give a kind of a deadline for when we can start seeing the engine build start coming to fruition. Also, I did forget to mention that I recently just moved, so I have parts and tools absolutely everywhere, so that doesn't also help with trying to work on this type of build. It's not an excuse, but just a little bit of a detail as to why we're also seeing a further delay in the build here. All right, so there she is. There's that little troublemaker, the little Ford 200. So got a little bit of a story to tell and some details to give, so please stick around. I promise you will understand why this has been kind of frustrating for me. So for those of you who don't know, the Ford 200s, they had what was called the logs. So the intake are literally casted into the cylinder head. They're not removable. So as you can see on mine, bam, this is what is called the log. This is actually the intake. This is what the carburetor sits on. Now you may have noticed something else, this bolt right here. So this bolt is just hanging about, it's just loose. This bolt is what's supposed to tie down the cylinder head and the header into one piece to create a good seal. That one in the front and the one in the rear has been busted. They're broken. Now, I don't have any header leaks or anything like that on this engine, thankfully. But I have another brand new header system that I would like to put on this engine that I just can't because I don't trust the cylinder head to not cause any leaks. Plus, I just have to replace the cylinder head. Now, this engine has what is called the small log. That is that little intake piece that's casted into the cylinder head. So I have tried my best to find another small log cylinder head, but every time I find them, they are just ungodly expensive. So if you go to eBay right now, there's a seller who has, I believe, 3, and they're for sale for just an enormous amount of money, like too much money. So one's for sale right now for $450 and $129 just to ship. And that cylinder head is not even refurbished. It has stuck bolts in it, so you know, you're gonna be spending the almost $500+ to get the darn thing, and then you still have to spend more money to try to get it refurbished. Now, why is this all important, the small log? Why am I talking so much about this small log cylinder head issue? Well, for those of you who also know, I wanted to use one of these. So this is the Edelbrock adapter piece, because it's not really an intake for the small log. As you can see, it's supposed to almost slip on and sit on top of the small log. This is a really cool piece. They stopped making this back in the 1970s, around that era. I had actually reached out to Edelbrock themselves to see when they stopped producing it, and Edelbrock even told me, hey, we have no idea when we stopped making that part. It was really cool, and ever since I got it, and I got it for a really good price, I've wanted to put that on. Plus, Tri-Power is just cool on these little old inline sixes. Now, because I can't find another small log cylinder head for a reasonable price, it makes using that part almost impossible. because in the I think it was 1969, Ford introduced what was then called the 250, which has what is called the large log. So the diameter of the log is larger. So if I were to get one of those heads, that adapter piece would no longer work because the diameter of the log is larger. So now it's a good thing to have the larger log because, well, it allows the flow of more air and more fuel, and even the valves are larger if I recall correctly. But every single time I have met somebody who was supposedly ready to sell theirs, the deal would fall through. So the very last person that I was talking to buy one of the large log cylinder heads decided that they wanted to back out of the deal because they ended up wanting the cylinder head, which I don't blame them. They're difficult to get. But it leaves me in a position where I can't add performance parts to this engine because the cylinder head is busted. And I can't get my hands on a small log for a decent price, and I definitely can't get my hands on a large log. So I've been stuck. So I did some more research, and for those of you who also don't know, the Ford 200 engine was made overseas, specifically in Argentina and in Australia. Now, Ford decided, in all of their wisdom, to produce those engines over there, but without the cast iron intake, or without the intake being casted into the cylinder head. So they have a removable intake, like most traditional engines have. So I started asking around. I went to a couple of forums and I found somebody who was able to import those cylinder heads. But those cylinder heads are so ungodly expensive. So I was able to speak to somebody who was able to import the Argentinian heads. And for the aluminum cylinder head, what he was selling it for, it was like $4,800, which that is too much money on a little inline six. I can't justify spending that amount of money on it because look, I love this engine. This thing is great, but it's not going to make a lot of ponies. It's never going to be a powerhouse. He also did have cast iron heads that had the 2-barrel intake on it, but those were still like $3,800. And then guess what? The American style headers don't work on it. So you need to buy either imported headers that will work with those cylinder heads, or you need to make your completely own custom headers. Now, I'm not above trying to make my own custom headers, but it was more money because wouldn't you know it, he was also selling the headers, and those were $700 a pop. It's not cheap. So I did some more research. I started looking around, and I was able to find some place that was willing to sell me a cylinder head, which now leads me to the ultimate direction we are going to be taking this engine build to. So I did more and more research trying to figure out where I can get a cylinder head at. And wouldn't you know it, this is the one time in my entire life where Advance Auto actually came to the rescue. So if you look up Ford 200 cylinder head Advance Auto, they actually have a listing for it on their website. Now, the caveat to it is you have to go in person in order to purchase it, and then it is the large log cylinder head. So it's the more desirable one, but I was able to go. I went today. I put my money down on it. They're for sale for $400, but you get $100 back when you return your cylinder head. And yeah, that's just the direction we're going to end up going because I can't justify spending that much money on a cylinder head for this little inline six. So because the Edelbrock, this part here, is not going to work anymore on the large log cylinder head, I am now in the market for the Offenheiser tri-power intake adapter that they still make, luckily. So we're still gonna, go for the tri-power setup on the 200. I'm still planning on building it like that, but we're gonna be using different parts now. So All that to say, we're still working on getting everything. Oh, and by the way, the cylinder head is not available or won't be in until I think they said 30th of April. So we're gonna have to wait around a little bit. But in anticipation of all of that, I did buy parts and wanted to talk about them a little bit and kind of show them off for the upgrades that I wanted to do for this engine. As you can see here, I was able to score this carburetor for a killer deal. It is a Motorcraft carburetor, but this is basically just the Holley 1940. Like I said, it's the Motorcraft, but it's essentially the same exact carburetor. And the cool part about this carburetor is there is a company that still creates the electronic choke conversion. So this is the carburetor that I would like to be in the center whenever I do get my Offenheiser adapter piece for the large log head. This carburetor here should not only flow better, because I actually believe that this is 190 CFM, so it's going to flow completely better, but with the electric choke, it will make starting the engine very easy, even with the triple carb setup. So I really look forward to having this thing on there. As you can see here, I also have the very famous eBay headers that are for sale for the 4200. This is kind of your typical upgrade that you'll see. I really like these headers. I think they sound great. Obviously, they're going to be way better. They're going to flow way better than the stock headers that are on the engine. But one cool thing to note, I was able to get this for I think $10 or $20 off. So on eBay, if you leave these in your carts for a little bit, the seller will 9 times out of 10 send you a discount code. And like I said, I was able to get a small discount on these headers. I think they look amazing on these engines. I think they sound better. Obviously, they're going to flow better. So you'll be able to make a few more ponies just off these engine parts alone. Finally, there's 2 other parts that we need to talk about. So I am looking at purchasing a brand new camshaft kit. I am preferably looking at buying from Clifford's Performance. They have this really cool camshaft kit, comes with everything. They call it the Torque Monster. And that's what I really want to get out of this inline 6, is just a ton of torque. Now, the caveat with that is I also need to buy the adjustable rocker arms. So once again, if you don't know, the rocker arms on the majority of 4200s are non-adjustable. It makes it very easy to rebuild, but if you want to start adding more power, you want to throw in bigger camshafts, you need to go out and find and buy the adjustable rocker arms for these engines. So I'm currently in the talks with somebody who is interested in selling me the adjustable rocker arms for a decent price. Once I get those parts, I'm then gonna go ahead and purchase the Clifford Performance, the Torque Monster camshaft, because like I said, looking at the specs on it, I think that's gonna get me the performance that I want, especially with the tri-power setup. I think it'll be a killer, really, really killer mix. So with all that being said, I know that was a lot, kind of a long story. Stick around, I promise we're gonna get working on the engine build. I also recently just picked up a brand new engine hoist. That's the Harbor Freight Special, but I'm really happy to have this here. And we have the engine stand right here in preparation for the engine rebuild. So pretty soon we'll have the engine pulled out of the old Ranchero and we will get on wrenching on that engine. So until next time, y'all, bye-bye.